Okay, guys, so well done so far. So we're just going to continue to add a little bit more complexity to the image with a few more layers. So again, keep repeating the process. So I'm going to click on the background layer again, duplicate layer. So right click, duplicate layer, and then click on our template. I'm going to move that down again. I might turn off these top two layers so it's clearer to see what I'm doing. And I'm going to shift the template to a different position and resize it again, Control T. You might find you've got to zoom out a bit. This template's quite big. Hold down Shift key. Make it much bigger again. Maybe move it into this corner because we've not really got much of a pattern from there. And a little bit bigger still. Okay, then return to apply. Okay, then just like before, Magic Wand tool, click on the white area. Should select everything apart from those bits in the middle. And then we click onto our layer, Control X to cut. That will remove those bits from the layer. Oh, sorry guys, I forgot to invert it. Undo cut. I'm going to undo cut pixels. Select inverse, edit cut or Control X. And again, you should see on the layer palette, it's just left a little bit of a fragment of that image behind. I'm going to select drop shadow again and apply the drop shadow and turn on the other couple of layers above. Now this is where we might want to start thinking about layer orders. So when we put that one on, we can't see a lot of it. So instead, I'm going to grab the layer and move it, just drag it on the right hand side in the layer palette up to the top. And I can still move it around once I've got it there, put it wherever I want to within the image. And once I've got it there, I could always free transform it as well. So Control T and resize it. So I've got like a bit of a funny edge to it at the moment if I put it in that position. So I'm going to change the scale of it and move it to a different part of the image. And press return. So what we can see now is we're starting to build up layers of this sort of honeycomb pattern. Now the other thing we might want to do is if we look at the image on the right is just cut through some actual hexagons themselves. So we're going to repeat the same process, but this time we're going to select a different area of the picture. So I'm going to go back to the background layer and the layer palette, click on that, right click, duplicate layer again. Same process. I'm going to turn on the template. I'm going to turn off these layers because it gets a bit confusing. Clicking on the eye icons. And this time I'm just going to select the hexagons themselves. So I'm going to select on the Magic Wand tool and click into the specific hexagons I want to select. I can do it quite randomly. Some with features, some without. And then click on the layer. This time I'm going to copy it. So Control C and then Control D. What you should see is it's just pasted in a new layer with those hexagons, but this time they're actually the parts of the face. Okay, I'm going to turn off that layer, turn on the other layers I've put on, and I'm going to, well, we could leave this one as is, or we could experiment with moving it. We'll add, before we do that, we'll add a layer style to it first. So we'll click on layer style, and we're going to add this time inner shadow instead of outer. Settings about the same, 26, 9, 12-ish, somewhere around 30-ish for the bottom one. Click OK. And that should apply a shadow to the inside of those hexagons. Now, all I've done there is move the layer up. If I move it here, those hexagons become a bit more visible. If I move it up again, a little bit more visible because they're sitting over the top of other bits and in between. And if we move it again, they're now on the top, so they're really visible. If I turn them on and off, you can see where they're popped into the image. Looks quite good in the most part, apart from this one, which looks, I think, a bit too big. So I'm going to move it back one layer. So it's in front of some but behind others, and that'll create this really interesting layering effect. Okay, we're going to repeat that process again now. The only thing that's different this time is we don't need to keep copying the background image because we're copying it as opposed to cutting through it. Okay, so I'm going to turn off my top couple of layers, turn on my template. I'm going to zoom out a bit, Control minus, and then Control T for edit free transform or for free transform. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller this time. Move it and select some different hexagons. Okay, click on the layer, Control C to copy, Control V to paste. And then we're going to apply the same layer style as before, inner shadow. And you should be able to see where our hexagons have appeared. Again, I'm going to turn the other layers back on. And then I'm just going to experiment with a layer order, putting this one to the top this time. And we'll just move it around, offset it a little bit. I want to move it a bit, but not too much. Again, I think on the top is too much. So we'll move it back a couple. Okay, I think that's starting to work really well. Just going to zoom in. Last thing we could do is start to create some real depth in some areas, as if the image is really cutting inside itself. So we're going to click back onto our layer mask. I'm going to take that up to the top this time. And I'm going to move it and position it here. And then just Control T to free transform it again. So I might just make a section that's a bit bigger. Okay, and I'm just going to select one section to cut into. So I'm going to use a Magic Wand tool. I'm going to select this hexagon here, copy this layer here. So click onto the background layer, Control C, Control V, copy it. And move it up to the top. Add my inner shadow. So we can see where it is. I'm going to Control T, make it a little bit bigger. And then I'm going to click back on my previous layer now. Select the same area again. I might just move it a little bit. Select the Magic Wand tool, click in there, click on the background layer, Control C, Control V, copy that again, and then I'm just going to drag that back up to the top. Turn off that template again, and then we add the same inner shadow to it. And I'm going to just move it over the top of the other one. And then we could just keep repeating that process so it looks like it goes inside itself. Simpler way of doing that as it gets more complicated. I'm just going to duplicate that layer. Control T. Make it a little bit smaller. Put it inside. Again, Control T. Duplicate layer. and move it a little bit. I might offset it. It doesn't line up as evenly. Then what you should see we're starting to get is this layering of the image looking like it's disappearing inside itself. If you've managed to get this far, really well done. The other thing you can do is start to cut into bits of a layer. So you could remove certain sections if you wanted to. So for instance, if I like this layer, but not this particular square here, or this particular hexagon, I can find the layer that's on, select it. I'm going to turn off my other layers so it's easier to see what I'm doing. And then I'm just going to cut that section out using the polygon lasso tool. Edit cut or Control X. So I think that image works well, works a lot better with that section out of it. What I'd probably do is continue to work on that eye section and distort that, maybe selecting some hexagons. So maybe we go back to moving this layer down towards the bottom. Turn off our top layers. And then we just pick something around this eye. I'm just going to make the whole template a bit smaller. Control minus to zoom out. Hold down Shift. Zoom in. And pick an area around that eye. Press return to apply. Control plus to zoom in. Select that hexagon. Copy that. Paste it back in. Control C, Control V. Apply our inner shadow again. And then move it slightly. And I'll probably repeat that process, but each time getting maybe a little bit smaller. So click back on the template, Control T, hold down Shift, make the template a bit smaller, select an increasingly small bit of the eye, and each time maybe cutting into it a bit more. So back onto the Magic Wand tool, click, click, back onto the background layer, Control C, Control V, back onto our effect, inner shadow, and then move that layer. I'm going to put it above the other layer so it cuts over the top of it. Move it so it's offset. Just turning on my other layers. So if it starts to get increasingly complicated, we've got a layer on the top which is blocking that one. Yeah, so we might want to move that layer backwards. Or select that section from that layer. So this bit here that's blocking those other eyes, select that, Control X to cut it, Control V to paste it, and then just move it further back in the layer order so it's behind those other eyes we've just put in. Again, well done guys, keep playing, keep experimenting with it.